You are listening to the Get Global podcast, a weekly journey into the international business landscape with leaders, knowers, and doers from around the world who share their stories and insights on the issues that matter most. Get Global brings you the best to help you thrive in foreign markets. Thank you for joining us, Dan Tarman. You are the Chief Communications Officer at eBay, and I am Julian Leuthold, the CEO and founder of Get Global. We're exploring eBay and its international doings today, and how you communicate cross cultures, how you are helping with the growth of eBay's brand internationally, and doing amazing things. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Julian. It's great to be here. And I must say it's particularly cool that we're doing a podcast where you're sitting in Los Angeles, I'm sitting in San Jose. We're doing this by audio, but I'm also seeing you on video, which who would have thought that would be possible even 10 years ago?
Living in the 21st century. Here we go. So this is going to be a lot of fun. So you were with us in 2016 in our inaugural event, and we've come a long way. What has the last year and a half been like for you and with eBay?
So it's been a really interesting year, and I actually think not in like in 12-month frame, but in a longer frame because of the journey we've been on at eBay. I joined eBay almost 3 years ago at an inflection point for the company when we were spinning out PayPal, which happened in July of 2015. And we embarked on a pretty significant transformation of our company top to bottom at that moment. And so I think in that kind of a frame, and as I think of that, you know, we've seen external environment changes, and then of course we've made changes within eBay and on eBay, and so we're seeing an acceleration of growth overall on our platform in terms of our gross merchandise volume, which is close to $90 billion a year now, we call it GMV, increase in new users, penetration in new markets, and continued tectonic shifts in the global retail landscape, which have profound implications not only for eBay, but for commerce in general.
So do tell me what some of these tectonic shifts are, the ones that you think about the most.
Well, you know, some of them I think are obvious, and then the implications that we all see and read about. There's a continued shift of commerce from the offline world to the online world, where overall globally online commerce still represents a relatively small percentage of overall retail commerce. You know, just to think in terms of the U.S. So Forrester, I think, came out with a statistic recently that predicted that online sales in the U.S. by 2022 will account for 17% of all retail sales. And what that tells you is that online commerce is still pretty underpenetrated, yet you're seeing this extraordinary growth. And the U.S. is a pretty developed market in terms of online commerce. And that's having implications that we're seeing on the high street and on main streets and in big box malls all over the world, where traditional retail is struggling. And you're seeing, I think in the U.S. last year, and I don't mean to make this U.S. centric, but just using some statistics that can be extrapolated. In the U.S. alone last year, there were 3,500 store closures and a 10% decline in in-store traffic, right? That's profound. And, you know, and we've seen the struggles that some of the traditional retailers are having. And so that has implications for commerce, for jobs, for consumer behavior, for public policy, for all sorts of issues.
And what has this meant for eBay? How have you responded to this major shift?
Well, I'll take it back a step, if you will, or elevate it to, defining what eBay is for your listeners, some of whom probably, or most of whom are probably familiar with the brand, but might not actually know what eBay really is. And we see that there is a gap of understanding amongst consumers and people generally about eBay. So a couple of things. eBay is a pure third-party marketplace. So we are a commerce platform that has 170 million active buyers globally. So 170 million consumers who shop on eBay. We have about 20 million businesses or people who sell on eBay. And by that, I mean, you or I might be a consumer seller on eBay. I sell stuff all the time. And then there are people who have businesses that sell on eBay, and that's where they make some or all of their living. And so, for us, we see ourselves as a platform of economic enablement and a vehicle or a platform through which anybody that can access online can plug into to sell just about anything in the world and to find a buyer who wants to buy it. And so if I take it back to that trend in retail, we believe that that eBay is and can be a means through which businesses, large and small, can succeed in an increasingly online world by giving a local retailer who might be geographically limited in terms of their reach of customers access to a global customer base. And I can cite a number of examples of that, and I'm happy to do so as we go on in the conversation. But our view is to be a partner to retail, large and small, to help those businesses, reach a global customer base and to enable them to leverage the technology platform that we've built over 22 years to succeed. To us, it's as simple as that, although it's very complicated work. But that's what eBay exists to do. Our ambition is for the world to shop first on eBay by enabling every person to find whatever it is they want to buy. We call it their version of perfect.
So does that meaning, how does the flavor of that change across various markets? I know that the substance is going to be the same, but in, say, countries like India, where 97%, 96% of the retail landscape is mom and pop shops, lots of handicrafts. There's a respect for person-to-person transactions. And then other markets where the meaning changes a little bit, how they might confront a topic or a brand like eBay. What are some of the interesting sort of varieties or variations on the theme that you encounter as you communicate with these cultures?
Yep. So I'll start with the example that you just used, and I can broaden it from there. So in India, last year we entered into a relationship with Flipkart, which is one of the large e-commerce players in India, and through that relationship, Flipkart has become eBay for India for all intents and purposes. And as part of that, we're working with Flipkart to enable Indian sellers and Indian merchants to list and sell their inventory in the US or in other markets on eBay. And so those small 1 and 2 person perhaps businesses that are Flipkart customers in India become eBay customers globally. And so we can enable them to reach global markets. And we give them all of the back end of the payments infrastructure and all of the technology that our platform enables. Obviously, if you're a business person, large or small, there's complexity to doing that. But part of our vision is to give even the smallest micro business in an emerging market like India, with an enormous consumer base in its own right in the domestic market, the opportunity to access global markets. And I think it goes to the heart of what your mission is at Get Global, right? Which is how do you go from local to global? And are there platforms that can accelerate that for you or enable that? And that's part of the reason that eBay exists in the world.
How much what percentage of the transactions, it might be a surprise statistic, but what percent of the transactions are international on eBay?
So, more than half of the commerce on the eBay platform happens outside of the US. So that's one way of answering it. And then a significant percentage, which we don't disclose specifics, but a significant percentage of the commerce that goes through eBay is cross-border trade. We call it CBT, meaning, from one market to another. And so we enable all sorts of export across our platform. And sellers on eBay that are more sophisticated, learn how to utilize the platform by forward deploying merchandise and inventory into distribution centers, et cetera. But we facilitate and enable an enormous amount of cross-border traffic every day. And in fact, it's interesting. We have a network operations center here. And if you go into it, you can see the site operations of eBay in real time. And one of the things you can see is literally a three-dimensional graphic that's showing eBay transactions around the world. And you can see transactions that are happening across borders and by time of day. So, it's very interesting to see when different countries are shopping and where they're shopping from. And you really get an understanding of the true global nature of eBay as a platform. We operate in well over 100 countries globally, and it's extraordinary to be part of that.
That must be pretty exciting to watch. So you mentioned at the beginning of the conversation that you're opening up some new markets. What's on the agenda, and which ones are you really excited about?
Well, we just announced last week, actually, the acquisition of an e-commerce platform in Japan called Q10, which was owned by a company called Geosis. We literally just announced that last Tuesday, so a week ago today. And Japan is an interesting use case. You might think that, well, Japan is a developed market. That doesn't seem like a big new emerging market play for a big company like eBay. And the fact of the matter is that e-commerce is still very low penetration in Japan. I think there's 10% or so penetration in e-commerce. And so we see a significant potential market opportunity in a market like Japan. And again, bringing some of those same tools and ideas together, which is enabling the domestic Japanese market, but also enabling global import and export. We already had a fairly robust export business from Japan, so enabling Japanese sellers to do cross-border trade. But this now gives us a significant domestic presence and opportunity set in Japan itself with consumers in Japan. So that's one very recent example.
It's amazing how often people get really excited about places like China and India, and they forget how big and robust the market is in Japan and how much goes on there. And it's a really exciting place. So that just went down. Anything else on the horizon as far as new markets are concerned, or consolidation or expansion within particular markets?
Yeah, well, and I'll stay in Asia for a moment. In China, where we also have a significant cross-border trade business, and we work with a very large number of Chinese sellers to reach global markets. And we also have several thousand technologists in China, in Shanghai, so we have a big engineering presence there. But we, over the last 4 months or so, we also launched a new domestic platform in China, enabling import into China of products on eBay from outside of China, because we've seen that Chinese consumers have a high interest and demand for non-Chinese goods. And so eBay has a long and frankly a mixed history in China, and the Chinese market is, as we know, is well penetrated domestically by other players. But we believe we have an interesting and unique value proposition by giving access to Chinese consumers to non-Chinese products from the eBay platform. And so that's also something that we've recently embarked on, and that's still relatively nascent. And then again, as I said, we have significant businesses around the world. I obviously wouldn't reveal things that we might have plans for, but we're active in every corner of the world.
Definitely. So turning back to some of these tectonic shifts that are, confronting the retail and e-commerce space, seems like folks are really heading towards frontier technologies like artificial intelligence, drones. It seems like everybody and their grandmother asks us about blockchain. Where do these start to come in real ways, and how urgent is it to adopt these kinds of technologies to stay out ahead, in your view?
Yeah, so it's a great question. I'll start with AI, with artificial intelligence. And I'll note that, you just rattled off the buzziest of tech buzzwords, right? AI, drones. If you had thrown VR in there, we would have had a trifecta, right? And then we can end with crypto just for the heck of it.
Right.
But if you separate some of the headline hype from those things, I'll give you an example with AI. So artificial intelligence is incredibly important, generally and specifically for eBay. For eBay, it's important for a few reasons. If you think about something I said earlier, eBay has in our catalog, in our platform, we have about 1.2 billion items for sale. And our belief is that we help organize the world's inventory, right? And that's a really important undertaking. But when you have 1.2 billion things for sale on your platform, organizing that isn't the easiest thing. It's not like having a bunch of shelves in a store where you just got to move some products around, which in and of itself can be complicated. And so we are deploying artificial intelligence across our platform to create a product-based marketplace instead of a listings-based marketplace. And that might not mean anything to many of your listeners, but basically it means that instead of seeing listing after listing after listing on eBay and not knowing how to make heads or tails of either, you can shop by the spectrum of products in a category. And AI is one of the technology platforms that's enabling us to do that. And we've been deploying AI over the last few years with particular focus, but we're now reaching critical mass in those efforts. And if I connect it back to another question you asked is, basically, what's the future of retail in a world where you have these tectonic shifts happening? What does that mean for the mom and pop in India or the relatively small retailer in Akron, Ohio? It means that we will help you plug into AI, right? So we will enable you to leverage artificial intelligence so that your inventory can be discoverable and shoppable and delivered in a more personalized manner in a shopping experience to a user, so that I can match what someone that's a consumer has signaled they want or they have a preference for, and match them to a piece of inventory on our platform, because our algorithms enable us to do that through machine learning and deep learning, et cetera. And in that world, AI can go from being a scary thing that I might read or hear about to being a tool that I can very directly leverage as a small business person. Now, that's not to in any way minimize some of the broader societal concerns of things like AI and robots and the rise of the machine. There are some profound societal questions and issues that need to be grappled with, and we're very cognizant of. But for the way we are deploying technologies like artificial intelligence, we believe that that our approach is a net benefit to everybody on our platform, and is another means of, frankly, of economic empowerment for the sellers who are part of the eBay community.
So what would the experience be like for a small manufacturer of a consumer good, say in Brazil? They have a tough time with the or have a tough time matching what they've built to what the world wants. Or or any other country where, it's primarily the local language that's spoken and not so much English, at various economic brackets. What does the experience, is there any relevance in this for them? Is it mostly on the shopper side that you're exploring this? Or is it on both ends that there's innovation within the AI space?
So it is at both ends. There is some base level of business fluency that a person or a business will need in order to be successful on the eBay platform or on any other platform. We talk about eBay being a platform of economic empowerment, and that means we'll give you the tools to succeed, but you have to know how to succeed, right? We don't do the work for the business. We give them the tools and the means through which to do that. And so, if someone in a country like Brazil is a micro entrepreneur and they're manufacturing some product that might have a market of demand for it, and they want to access a global set of buyers, they will need to have a threshold level of business acumen to do that. So it could be language, it could be some financial acumen, etc. Now, I will say one of the things that we're doing that's kind of core to eBay, it's not part of our central part of our business, but it is core to eBay, is we also have an area of our company, our foundation, where we invest in micro entrepreneurs and in creating more inclusive entrepreneurship to help businesses form at the early stages and to give them, the most fundamental tools of business formation and or finance, whether they end up on the eBay platform or not. Because if our raison d'etre is that we empower people and create opportunity for all, that means that people might or might not end up using our platform, but we believe, that rising tide lifts all boats. And so, for instance, we've partnered with Kiva in a pretty significant program to provide micro lending to nascent entrepreneurs around the world. And we've partnered with other organizations as well to help businesses in the formative stages. And so I know that's a bit of a long-winded answer to your question, perhaps. But if you're going to get onto the eBay platform, there's a threshold level of business acumen and business literacy that you need. But we also believe in incubating those ideas as well for purposes of that it's the right thing to do for society.
Okay. So expanding a little bit also on the AI front, what is the vision and what would be the ideal? And I know that maybe this is a technical question for, I guess, the engineering set, but from your point of view and for what you would like to see and communicate to the world, where do you see that going? And especially in the context of the rapidly developing space of e-commerce?
So I think you appropriately flagged the risks of asking a communications guy an engineering-centric question. So let's just have that as an out or a caveat for what I'm about to say. Okay. But it's, in all seriousness, we're moving towards providing a highly personalized shopping experience to any person that wants to shop on eBay. And we're actually on the cusp today of launching a new significant platform feature that will enable that. More to come in a few weeks on that. But we believe that highly personalized shopping by leveraging machine learning and artificial intelligence will enable more efficient commerce. And that means that the distance, so to speak, between a buyer and a seller can be compressed, right? Because I can better target what inventory I offer to sell if I have greater demand signals from what cohorts of consumers want. And then within that, I can target those consumers that have signaled that they want that by leveraging technologies like AI. And so that's where we're heading, which is hyper personalized, easy, frictionless shopping enabled by technology, that's also still quite human. And another thing I would point out that differentiates eBay perhaps from others is, eBay is a place to shop where you want to, where you're expressing yourself, you're pursuing things that you're interested in and passionate about, or you're seeking treasures. We call them self-expressionists and treasure hunters in our nomenclature. eBay is not necessarily the place that you'll come to buy paper towels and things like that. Although we offer that, but the best use case for eBay is for someone that's a self-expressionist or a treasure hunter. I'm really into guitars, so I collect. Not only do I like to buy guitars, but I like cool stuff about guitars as an example. Or whatever your passion point is. You're a sneakerhead, you're super into sneakers. And so getting back to your question, our vision for AI is to create a hyper-personalized experience. If you're into sneakers and guitars, where we can leverage our platform to deliver the world's inventory in a very personalized way to you to match your interests. That's a really cool shopping experience that you can have online.
Indeed. Now I'm going to come back now to something that is definitely germane to you and just you, is the storytelling aspect of all of this and telling that across the world. Do you find, I guess, the method and the ideation of the stories that you do tell within markets changing, or do you see that the way that you explore how to communicate this and to tell stories that people love, because you are dealing with individuals and there is that feeling of the personal that's laced throughout eBay. How do you maximize that and leverage that at the national level and the cultural level?
So that's a really good question, and we think about that, in my function of the company quite often. Obviously the way that people communicate, receive, and engage information continues to change dramatically. And, what kinds of sources of information people seek out and rely on has been changing as well. And breaking through the noise and being able to have a message resonate with a different audience, becomes ever more challenging. In my view, there are certain core principles that should guide our narrative and what and how we communicate that are kind of immutable, because we believe they have universal resonance. For instance, the idea of economic empowerment and the idea of leveraging technology as a means for empowerment is very powerful, and it's quite authentic. I've not seen an instance where that doesn't resonate. And so reminding people what and who eBay is a fundamental priority of what my team and I do and for the company. And I'll come back to an example of that in a minute. At the same time, we also need to make it clear to people that you might know the name eBay, but you also might not understand how eBay has been changing. Right? So conveying a more modern and updated and progressive understanding of eBay as a technology platform and as a retail commerce platform is also a priority of ours. And of course, it depends on what market you're in, right? We have different market positions and different relative strengths of our business in different markets. And so obviously we tailor and adapt our messaging accordingly.
Excellent. So you mentioned in just a few moments ago, Kiva and activities to support micro entrepreneurs and things like that. I think that you've probably been at that for a while with this, eBay has been at that for quite a while. But something that's interesting, and I think that you touched on this in your notes, the notes that we've exchanged back and forth, is that the role of the private sector in relationship to society is changing and it's gone through ever accelerating change, it seems, over the last 3 years or so, where people are demanding of brands that they keep and maintain their own personal values, whatever those may be. That seems to be in high gear here in the United States. Is that something that you see internationally as well? And if so, how do you gel with that, and how do you work with that?
Yeah, so we definitely see it globally. It does depend on, the different markets you're in and the nature of the societies within those markets and the political frameworks in those markets. A couple things I would say that is hopefully responsive to that question and point. First, I really believe that eBay is an authentically purpose-driven company. It's one of the things that attracted me to come and work here. The company was founded based on purpose. It was founded by Pierre Omidyar, who was an immigrant to the United States, who had an idea that that the internet could be used as a way to match a buyer and a seller, strangers that don't know each other, but that could trust, that there could be a fundamental foundation of trust through which a transaction could occur. And the first thing he sold on eBay was a broken laser pointer to a gentleman who collected broken laser pointers in Canada. That kind of reaffirmed to him that, wow, there's a market for broken laser pointers. Number one, how interesting, who would have thought? But number two, that the internet could be that vehicle for bringing, supply and demand together. And so we scaled the business over the last 22 plus years based on that simple premise, but it is authentically a purpose-driven company based on economic empowerment. And people come to work here because of that. They stay working here because of that. Many of our sellers sell on the platform because they are the living examples and embodiment of that. And for us at eBay, our sellers are our heroes, truly. It's extraordinary when you hear and see the stories of so many people that have lifted themselves up through our platform. We also see that the expectations of the private sector continue to change and evolve. Corporations used to have what seemed like a more narrowly defined role. If you're a public company, it would be to deliver returns to shareholders and things of that nature. And the expectations on companies and the role of the private sector seems to continue to be morphing as the nature of society continues to change as well. So we believe we have responsibilities within that. We believe that we have a responsibility to find ways to further harness the power of our platform for the benefit of society. So I'll give you an example. I've alluded to this in passing without specifically talking about it throughout our conversation. We're very mindful that there are a lot of questions about what is the role of the tech industry, and is the tech industry, quote unquote, working at cross purposes with broader society. And there are very real and significant issues that are worth discussing around that. We say in response to that, well, what is our role? Our role is to do what we do and ensure that we're doing it at scale for the benefit of as many people as possible. So specifically, a few months ago, we began a partnership with the city of Akron, Ohio, which is a wonderful city in the heart of Ohio that used to be a significant manufacturing center, particularly for rubber, for the automotive industry, but beyond that as well. And like many other cities of its nature, Akron has not benefited from some of the tech advancements that, places like Silicon Valley and others have. But Akron also has a great population of entrepreneurs and small businesses. And so we reached out to Akron and we extended our hand in partnership to them to say, if it makes sense and you're willing, we would love to work together with you to help bring some of the small businesses and retailers in Akron that might be either nascent businesses or struggling businesses, and to help get them onto the eBay platform so that they could benefit from what's happening in e-commerce and access global markets. So we were there a couple months ago. Our CEO, Devin Wenig, and I and a few others were there. We did a press conference with the mayor, as well as with the mayor of Warren, Ohio. And we kicked off this project called the eBay Akron Retail Revival Project. Just last week, we had a team back in Akron, and we're in the process of onboarding 120 businesses in Akron, Ohio, bringing them onto the eBay platform with the mantra that Akron is always open on eBay. And I believe that our partners and friends in Akron are looking at what we're doing as a catalyst for how to spur creativity and entrepreneurship, additional creativity and entrepreneurship in their wonderful city. And our vision is to work in partnership with them. We're bringing them the tools to get onto eBay and to succeed. We had 20 plus eBay personnel in Akron last week working with them. So we're going to help them, get stood up on the eBay platform as businesses. And our vision is to replicate that in other cities. We've done it successfully in Germany in a city called Mönchengladbach. We've done it in Italy in a city called L'Aquila. And we're in active conversations with others as well. And so that, to us, is in part the realization of the promise of eBay, the potential of technology to be accessible to anybody, whether you live in Ohio or Silicon Valley or Mönchengladbach, Germany. And it's not to take a Pollyanna view of the world. We recognize there are significant issues of economic disparity, but we ask ourselves, well, what can we do? And to your question, Julian, what's our role? What is the role of a private company in civil society in today's world? And so, I know that was a bit of a long-winded answer to your question, but we're really proud of that as one small, modest example.
No, I think it touches on something really important, especially in our wheelhouse, which is that, I think the governments have done a pretty bad job of explaining how everyday people, or even companies that technically should be engaged in the global economy, and explaining to them how it works, how to do it well, giving them the access and the information that they need to be able to do it the right way. So stepping in and doing that is sort of like taking a slice from the public sector and taking it upon yourself to help them succeed. And it helps you, it helps them. It's a win-win all around. And it's interesting that you do it on a city level, that your unit for entry is the city. Why did you choose that?
Yeah, it's a great question. And it's not the only way to go, but one of our, as we look at the landscape, we recognize that small businesses, I said this earlier, small businesses on main streets or high streets around the world, small retailers are struggling, right? And they're struggling in part because of some of these significant shifts, these paradigm level shifts that are happening in the economy. And so our hypothesis was, well, can't we help them? Right? Can't we go into a city where there's increasing vacancies in their stores, or where their retailers are struggling to find a market for their goods, and where today they're almost 100% dependent on people walking into the store? Nobody walks into a store only anymore. So let's deliver some eBay to them and see if that could help. And, and we're not claiming that this is going to be a panacea. In fact, I try to temper expectations. We're not going to transform those businesses, but we're going to give them the tools to empower themselves, and they'll see what they can do with it. But that's like the promise of a platform like eBay. And so we decided to start with a city because it's something like you can get your arms around. It's tangible. It's a physical geographic place. And it has the critical mass of a fantastic government and policymakers that are heavily invested in doing this, the right business environment, the right spirit and ethos amongst the community, and a university partner in the University of Akron, and importantly, an existing eBay community of sellers. So those were like the ingredients that led us to say, let's go to a city that has all of that formula, and see what we can do.
Nice. And last question, you spoke at the first Get Global in 2016 about curing yourself or releasing yourself of home country bias, thinking about the rest of the world the way that you would about your own market. In our experience, this is a particularly challenging thing for Americans to do because we're separated by large oceans, so much economic activity here, so much of the world's media is produced and consumed here. How do you do it? Have you discovered a checklist of tips, some mental exercises to perform when you're thinking through foreign challenges?
Well, I think we have the benefit of being a global company, and so we're an American headquartered and founded company, but we have people all over the world. We have 50 plus physical offices around the world and 15,000 or so employees. And so when you say domestic, I would say domestic what? Domestic Germany? Because I got a huge team of people in Germany that are domestic Germany. Domestic Japan now. We're gonna, so we think from their perspective because there is we, right? And at the same time, we've become ever more conscious of our unconscious biases. We have a very big focus on diversity and inclusion here, and it's not an end unto itself. It's because having a mindset of inclusion enables you to think from the seat or the perspective of someone that's sitting somewhere else. But we don't always get it right. But we have a global conversation as a company with our team around the world, and we empower those teams in the different markets in which we operate to make decisions and to operate their businesses locally, not to be driven by some distant central mandate. We obviously have a global strategic plan that we execute, but we are a truly global enterprise, and I've seen it directly and up close on a daily basis, and it by and large it works because of that.
Fantastic. Well, Dan, Tarman, thank you so much for doing this with us and taking some time out of your day to chat. It's a pleasure. We didn't get to chat much when you were at Get Global in 2016. We were both in the middle of big events, but it's really a delight to have you today. Thank you. Thanks for listening. If you'd like to find out more about our events and get more global intel every week, sign up for our newsletter at getglobal.co.